Welcome to this explainer where we're diving straight into what I like to call the ultimate relationship paradox. Think about it. Why is it that 3 weeks of pure, uninterrupted paradise so often leads to absolutely explosive arguments? It's a scenario so many couples face, and honestly, it feels completely illogical. You finally have time off, the sun is shining, the stress of work is completely gone, and instead of romantic bliss, you find yourselves bickering over absolutely nothing, like who packed the wrong sunscreen or misreading the GPS on the way to the beach. Well, today we are going to unpack the hidden systemic mechanisms behind this incredibly frustrating phenomenon.
To do this, we're going to explore a very specific case today. Let's call our guy the architect. He came forward with his agonizing problem. He literally wants to stop taking vacations with his girlfriend altogether. Why? Because out of 3 whole weeks away, she constantly picks fights. And we're not just talking normal disagreements here. He notes that she seems to be actively searching for things to fight about. It feels incredibly unfair and frankly exhausting. But rather than just writing this off as bad behavior, we're going to see exactly how this works systemically. Because as it turns out, her behavior isn't random at all. It's actually a highly predictable defense mechanism. So let's jump right into section 1, peeling back the layers of systemic triggers in relationships. To actually understand this paradox, we've got to look way beneath the surface of these arguments. We have to stop focusing on the actual content of the fights, the late dinner reservations or the wrong turn on the map, and start looking at what the body is actually reacting to. We've talked in other explainers about attachment wounds being triggered by a lack of safety, like the stress of visiting a highly critical in-law, for example. But a vacation? A vacation flips the script completely. While visiting an in-law might trigger a feeling of unsafety, a vacation triggers an overdose of inescapable closeness. Systemically, it's the exact same protective mechanism firing off, just with a totally inverted trigger. Think about what a vacation actually does to your relationship system. You've got 3 uninterrupted weeks together. No work, no daily agenda, no defined roles, and crucially, absolutely no escape routes. All the buffers that normally regulate the distance between you and your partner in everyday life, your colleagues, your daily tasks, your separate physical spaces, your routines, they all vanish literally overnight. Now, for most couples, removing those buffers is the ultimate gift. But for someone with an attachment wound, removing daily buffers makes long, inescapable closeness feel like a massive threat. Why? Because that is exactly where things went wrong in their past. Their nervous system simply has no recorded experience of it being safe to be that close to someone they depend on for an extended period of time. Here's the really crucial point. A fight creates instant emotional and sometimes physical distance. It gives her panicked nervous system the room it needs to breathe. When the architect says his girlfriend is looking for a fight, well, he's literally correct. But she isn't looking for a specific topic. Her nervous system is desperately looking for distance, and any topic will do. An argument is just the fastest, most effective tool to instantly put meters of emotional distance between two people. The fight is just the system gasping for air. So as we piece this together, there are 3 distinct layers to this holiday paradox, and they compound on each other to create the perfect storm. The first, as we just discussed, is the total loss of those daily buffers. But, that's really just the beginning of the systemic overload. The second layer is where it gets really complex. Imagine growing up learning that love and happiness absolutely must be earned, usually through achievement or caretaking. If that's your baseline, 3 weeks of unconditional rest is terrifying. A vacation is, by definition, a time to do nothing, to receive and to just enjoy. But if you have an attachment wound, that exact state of unearned rest was never free. The nervous system literally lacks the software to process 3 weeks of unconditional togetherness without feeling like the other shoe is about to drop. And that explains why fights tend to happen right at the most beautiful moments. Have you ever noticed that? The biggest blow-ups happen during the perfect sunset dinner or right after an amazing day at the beach. It's no coincidence at all. Happiness itself is the trigger. In their early life, feeling happy and letting their guard down usually meant the blow was coming. The tension of this unearned happiness becomes so utterly unbearable that the system sabotages the moment just to maintain a sense of control over the inevitable drop. If the crash is coming anyway, the nervous system decides it's way better to initiate it and control the fallout. Then we have the third layer, which is all about your own tense anticipation. As you're boarding the plane, her system misreads your tension as distance, which causes a self-fulfilling prophecy of vigilance. Let's be totally honest here. After a few ruined vacations, the architect is not stepping onto that airplane relaxed. His body already knows exactly what's coming. That vigilance and physical tension are palpable. And her hypersensitive nervous system, it reads his tense, careful behavior as him pulling away.
This just confirms to her system that she needs to be on guard, and suddenly you are both carrying the heavy baggage of every past ruined vacation before you've even checked into the hotel. Moving right along to section 2, the shrinking relationship and the danger of avoidance. It's a completely logical, self-protective instinct for our guy, the architect, to just throw his hands up and say, I'm just not doing this anymore. But systemically, this is incredibly dangerous. If you just set a hard boundary to never go on holiday, you slowly shrink the relationship down, domain by domain, until literally only logistics remain. Look at how this progresses. First, it's, I won't come to your mother's house anymore because it always ends in a fight. Now it's, I won't go on holiday with you anymore. Individually, sure, these are understandable boundaries. But together, they form a pretty grim pattern. You are surrendering territory. Domain by domain, the relationship gets closed off because it's too explosive. And this is exactly how a simmering systemic issue ends. Not with a giant explosion, but with a relationship that shrinks and shrinks until you're basically just roommates managing household logistics. Because avoiding the issue, it just confirms to her nervous system that you will eventually abandon her, and it confirms to your system that the relationship is impossible. It's a massive short-term win because, hey, you dodged the immediate conflict. But long-term, it's devastating proof of failure for both of your nervous systems. Her inner fear of abandonment is validated. She thinks, see, he is pulling away. And his fear of being trapped in dysfunction is validated. He thinks, see, we can't do anything normal together. All right, let's get into section 3, a boundary with a door, and looking at systemic solutions. So the big question is, how do we actually set protective boundaries without slowly killing the relationship in the process? Because the architect isn't wrong for wanting to protect his own peace. The question isn't whether or not to set a boundary. The question is, what kind of boundary are you setting? Is it going to freeze the destructive pattern, or will it force systemic change? The real difference lies between a closed boundary that isolates you both and a boundary with a door that actually forces systemic healing. If you just say, I'm not going, you remove the symptoms, sure, but the underlying disease remains perfectly intact. A boundary with a door sounds more like this. Listen, I will not go away for 3 weeks as long as this pattern remains untreated. It's just too damaging for us. But I do want to go away with you if we actively work on this. It is the exact same protective limit, but it leaves a clearer pathway open for connection and repair. Which brings us to section 4. Treating the core wound with some practical steps forward. So how do we practically manage the nervous system while actively treating the wound? Let's say she agrees and you're working on it together. You can't just jump straight back into a 3-week trip to Bali. You have to dose the exposure. Here's the exact practical prescription to dose that closeness. Keep trips to a maximum of 5 days, ensure daily personal space, and establish a code word. 3 weeks is simply an overdose for an untreated attachment wound. 5 days? That is a manageable dose. Furthermore, you absolutely must structure the days so that there is built-in distance. Maybe you each take your own mornings, or you have separate activities. If you plan the distance in advance, her nervous system doesn't have to violently force the distance by starting a fight. And finally, you bring back the code word. Now, the absolutely crucial point with having a code word is to identify out loud that the nervous system is seeking distance rather than getting dragged into the fake argument over nothing. When she starts nitpicking the itinerary or getting unusually irritated, you don't defend the itinerary. No way. You use the agreed-upon code word to gently signal, hey, I see that your system is getting overwhelmed right now and looking for distance. Let's take an hour apart. You name the mechanism. You do not fight the surface topic. As we wrap up this explainer today, I want you to remember that these aren't just separate, random problems cropping up out of nowhere. They are one core attachment wound showing up on different stages. Whether she's picking a fight at her mother's house, starting an argument on a beautiful beach, or pushing you away when you just try to support her emotionally, it is the exact same systemic machinery at work. It appears wherever closeness or the demand for safety peaks. Because every stage you close down without treating that underlying wound, it just moves the explosive performance somewhere else. You can refuse to go on holiday all you want, but the wound will just find a new arena to act out in. You simply cannot outrun a systemic pattern by just shrinking your life to avoid the triggers. So I'm going to leave you with this provocative question to ask yourself the next time you feel the overwhelming urge to just walk away from a recurring conflict. Will this boundary be another silent retreat into a shrinking relationship, or the conversation that actually saves it? Setting a boundary to protect yourself on vacation is completely legitimate. Just make it part of the existential conversation that says, we can't go on like this, but here's what we need to do so we can move forward together. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember to keep looking beneath the surface.